in LA Fitness. That's how Zach be dropping them dimes.
I think you're giving Zach too much credit, Perk. I just do. Welcome to The Jump. I'm Rachel Nichols. Today I'm joined by NBA champ Kendrick Perkins and our senior writer, host of the Low Post podcast. Welcome to Zach Lowe. Coming up, guys, the Hornets agreed to a 4-year, $120 million contract with Gordon Hayward. Were they right to gamble on him? We'll get to Hayward shortly, but first, what a weekend for the defending champs. The Lakers agreed to a trade for Dennis Schroeder before free agency began, then picked up Sixth Man of the Year Montrezl Harrell and Marc Gasol over the weekend. They also re-signed KCP and Markieff Morris. As for the Clippers, they picked up Serge Ibaka and Luke Kennard, and they re-signed Marcus Morris as well. So, Perk, who has the better roster on paper between these two LA teams? Of course, they don't play on paper, but who would you say?
It's the Lakers, Rachel. Rob Pelinka went out there in free agency, and he did his thing. He went out there and got free agents like the Lakers lost and didn't win the championship. When you look at him getting Dennis Schroeder, Montrezl Harrell, who we stole from the Clippers, who was the Sixth Man of the Year, and then you go out there and get Wes Matthews for 3.6, one of the best two-way players in the game today. Not the best, but one of the best. And then you go and land Marc Gasol, a veteran big. That was crucial.
Yeah, the answer has to be both these teams are awesome. They're my favorites to go 1 and 2 in the West. But look, the Lakers just won a championship and they got better. So the answer has to be Lakers. Dennis Schroeder adds an ingredient they just didn't have last year. A water bug point guard who can create his own shot. I think he'll do a great job running pick and roll with LeBron and AD. And Marc Gasol is a perfect fit with their starting five if they decide to start him. Same level of interior defense as Dwight and JaVale, maybe even a little better, except he can shoot threes and space the floor for Anthony Davis. So all of a sudden when Anthony Davis is posting up, the lane is clear. Anthony Davis's pick and roll diving to the rim, the lane is clear. And oh, by the way, if you decide to put your center on Anthony Davis and try to hide your power forward on Marc Gasol, he can take that guy down to the weight room. You throw in Montrezl Harrell, maybe keep him in a sixth man, kind of roll off the bench. I think the Lakers had an amazing offseason. Clippers are doing great, but when you win the championship, you get the benefit of the doubt.
It really does seem like a long time ago, guys, right? That the narrative out there was, gee, I don't know if players want to play with LeBron. Kyrie left. Kevin Durant didn't want to come. Kawhi Leonard didn't want to come to Lakers and play with him. Guess what? Guys seem to be wanting to play on that Lakers team. And such an interesting thing happened with the Lakers last year, and I wanted to ask you guys about it because last summer, I said once they built that roster, gee, I'm worried about their perimeter defense. I was very concerned about where that was going to come from. And if you look at the numbers of where this Lakers roster, their core players were the previous season, look at their defensive numbers from last season, you can see where that concern was. But then look at this past season. Every single guy got better. I mean, much better. And I would say this is in some ways the Frank Vogel effect. This is in some ways LeBron getting serious on defense the way he hadn't in the previous few years. But it has sort of made me wonder, how do we account for this thing when looking at rosters to say, some of these guys might be so much better consistently 1 through 8 there than they were the previous season. Zach, when you see those numbers, what do you do when you evaluate rosters?
Well, a lot of those numbers, those are team defense or individual defensive ratings. Those are really heavily dependent on your team context. So when you add in Anthony Davis and you add in engaged LeBron James and you retool the team around them, everybody's defensive numbers are going to get better. So I don't put a huge amount of stock into those numbers. I just think the Lakers got better talent, including a defensive player of the year level player in Anthony Davis, a coach who's going to stress defense from day one. And they came out with the mindset of, we're building our team defense and out. And when you do all those things together, yeah, everybody's numbers are going to improve. I don't think, and everyone bought in. Guys who maybe hadn't bought in as much in the past bought in. So that's what happens. And I do think they can carry that over into this season. And as you pointed out, Rachel, their perimeter depth, just as good now as it was when they won in the bubble, maybe even better.
And Zach, you hit a great point by bringing up Frank Vogel. When you look at Coach Vogel, especially when he was with the Pacers, they were always at the top defensively. So Frank Vogel brings that defensive mindset. And once he got LeBron James and Anthony Davis to buy in, then it's a ripple effect. Now you see Caldwell Pope, he's buying in on the defensive end. And then you seen Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee last year, the way that they had a defensive impact. But now you add Dennis Schroeder, who's a guy that could pick up 94 feet, who's feisty on the defensive end, who gets you extra possession, along with a guy like Montrezl Harrell. Look, we praise Montrezl Harrell about his offensive package and his 19 points a game, but he's great at taking charges. He's an underrated shot blocker. And then we all know locked in Marc Gasol, what he brings to the table, along with Wesley Matthews locking in on the wing position at $3.6 million. Hey, it looks like pure gold to me for the Los Angeles Lakers.
And on the Clippers side, Serge Ibaka, I think, makes up for a lot of losses there. But Zach, do you think they're done? Because a true ball floor general, it feels like they still need to fill out on that roster.
Well, there just aren't a lot of those players left unless they want to re-sign Reggie Jackson. It's getting to be slim pickings. But to answer your question, no, I don't think they're done. And I don't necessarily think there's a move that happens now or maybe even before the season. But I don't think the Clippers, as they stand right now, first of all, they have to add a couple of players. Second of all, I just don't think this is going to be the team that is playing for the title or playing in the playoffs after the trade deadline. I think they'll tweak it a little bit, but Ibaka was a hugely important signing for them.
I agree. Look, the Clippers dropped the ball. I thought they would be more aggressive this offseason. I thought that they would try to go out there and really pursue Rajon Rondo because that's what they're missing. They're missing that floor general. They're missing that veteran leader to be on the ball club, to be that guy who controls the locker room outside of basketball. But they didn't go out there and they didn't be aggressive. To me right now, the Clippers are losing, especially the LA battle, but they're losing in the free agency battle tremendously. Serge Ibaka was a good pickup, but they needed to add more pieces, and they're not getting it done right now.
Well, they got time before the trade deadline, still months away. We'll see how they tweak and come up with a roster that's going to take them into the playoffs. I do want to move on to Gordon Hayward because he and the Hornets agreed to a 4-year, $120 million deal over the weekend, guys. A lot of folks question Hayward opting out of his $34 million option with the Celtics for next season, but clearly it was for a reason. It worked out for him. Zach, what's your assessment of Charlotte's decision to gamble on Hayward here?
All right, let me defend the Charlotte Hornets a little bit. Do I think this is a good contract? Not really. Do I think it'll be like a trade asset in a couple of years? No. But it's not like the Celtics and the Pacers in a sign and trade were offering $80 million or $90 million. It was something over $100 million. So it's not like the difference was that big. And look, if you want free agents to come to Charlotte, this is what you have to do. Just like if you want free agents to come to any kind of small market, you have to overpay them. And all you want to say is, well, they should just keep tanking and tanking and tanking. Well, that's just not a reality for a lot of these teams. It's not a reality for these small market teams, even in a year when you can't sell tickets. And also, the Hornets, as things stood before, could have had like $50, $60 million in cap space this coming offseason when like 2/3 of the league is going to have a lot of cap space. What are you buying with that cap space that's better than Gordon Hayward? Gordon Hayward, if he stays healthy, is still a really, really good player. So no, I don't think it's a great contract. And yeah, everyone wants to clown the Hornets for going all in for the 8th seed like they always do. I just don't think it's as bad of a deal as people are making it out to be. And I think Gordon Hayward is still a damn good player.
Well, Zach, I have to disagree with you. Look, I'm all in for players getting their bread and getting their lettuce, but for the Hornets, this was a bad deal. And look, we're coming up on Thanksgiving, and Michael Jordan is already thinking about Christmas because if he's going to be this giving, I might have to retire from ESPN and go get back in shape because if he's going to be giving out millions of dollars, I can go out there and go set picks and rebound if he's just in the giving mood. Look, this type of signing is not good. And I understand it's hard to land free agents in a small market. But when you go out there and give $120 million to a guy that's over 30, that's getting up in age, to land a Gordon Hayward, who's, to me, not a number one option guy, it could set your organization back in the future. And I just think with an organization like the Hornets, you did well by drafting LaMelo Ball. You continue to draft young guys and develop young guys and have a great player development, not go out there and spend $120 million on an agent Gordon Hayward who haven't really been healthy.
His health is one of the big flags, right? Of course, the injury when he first got to Boston was a freak injury, but he's had many injuries since then, missed a chunk of time in the bubble. I do always want to compare it, though. If you're spending money on Gordon and people say, you shouldn't be doing that, it's way overpaying him. Well, what else would you be spending that money on? And to Zach's point, their options of what else to spend that money on are not the same as some other teams around the league. So we'll just have to watch and see if he becomes a worthwhile signing for them, and especially his health over the coming years. I do want to switch gears, guys, quickly, though, because a delegation of NBA players, several officials from the Players Association, were at the Vatican today, for a private audience with Pope Francis to discuss their work on social justice issues. The delegation included Kyle Korver and Sterling Brown from the Bucks, Jonathan Isaac of the Orlando Magic, Anthony Tolliver, the Union Secretary-Treasurer, Marco Bellinelli, and Michelle Roberts, Executive Director of the Players Union. Zach, this was your story this morning. What else can you tell us about how this came about and the discussions they had?
An intermediary for the Pope. The Pope, it feels weird to say the Pope and not Contavious Caldwell Pope, but they reached out to the union and said, hey, we really admire what these players have done for social justice and racial inequality. I'd like to have a visit with them, or the Pope would. And look, I don't know what you guys believe. It doesn't matter what I believe. When the Pope summons you, you apparently go to the Pope because everything he says is important for like 1 billion people on planet Earth. So for the players to get a stage like this and an audience like this, no matter what you believe, is kind of objectively a big deal.
Perk, absolutely. I know you agree with me that when the Pope calls, you got to say yes, right, Perk?
Absolutely. And when you think about it, Rachel, it tells you how great of a job these NBA guys, the current NBA guys that are playing, did as far as with what they doing outside of the court as far as their leadership and in social justice, because this is powerful and they got to keep it going. And I love what I'm seeing out of these young leaders and a couple older veteran leaders. So like Zach said, and like you said, when the Pope called, this is a beautiful thing to see. And it just shows that we're moving in the right direction.
Speaks a lot of Pope Francis as well, I think. All right, guys, coming up, the Hawks have been aggressive in free agency, including signing Bogdan Bogdanovic to an offer sheet. Is this something, nothing, or everything? Find out next on The Jump.
The Jump is brought to you by NBA 2K21. Everything is in the game.
Saying that the Hawks are targeting some veteran shooting, and Bogdan, Gallinari, Joe Harris, and Rondo are people that they're very interested in. They feel like they can get 2 of these guys for sure.
Welcome back to The Jump. I'm Rachel Nichols, still here with Kendrick Perkins, Zach Lowe, and you just heard former Atlanta Hawk, current Jump analyst Vince Carter on our free agency special on Friday. And guess what, guys? I don't know, Zach. He might be giving you a run for his money. He was right about Gallinari, right about Rondo being Hawks targets. And another guy he mentioned is the subject of our first topic here, one of our favorite games, Something, Nothing, or Everything. Yes, free agent Bogdan Bogdanovic has signed a 4-year, $72 million offer sheet with the Hawks. The Kings have until tomorrow to match that offer. If he stays with the Hawks, Vince Carter would be 3 for 4 on his predictions and reporting, Zach. So is this offer sheet something, nothing, or everything? And do you need to add Vince Carter to the reporting team here at ESPN?
Well, first of all, he was also right about Joe Harris. The Hawks would have loved to go after Joe Harris, but everybody knew he was going back to Brooklyn. The Bogdanovic offer sheet is something. I actually really like his fit at Atlanta. I like it better than Danilo Gallinari, who's going to have to play a lot of small forward for them, and I don't necessarily love that. I like the idea of another really good ball handler on the wing who can get the ball out of Trae Young's hands a little bit and let Trae Young run around and set screens like Steph Curry does. Trae could be really impactful in that kind of role. and give some other guys a chance to handle the ball. I think everyone's happier. The ecosystem works. So I really like this move by the Hawks, and now we just wait to see if the Kings match. And the Hawks made it nasty with like a trade kicker and stuff. I love when these offer sheets get nasty.
Rachel, Zach, Bogdanovich to the Hawks will be everything. With Trae Young and Bogdanovich, this might be the best scoring backcourt in the NBA. Bogdanovich is a guy that teams have to prep for and shoot around and make sure they have a focal point on how to stop him. He is a walking bucket, and you pair him along a guy that's a level 4 scorer like Trae Young, it's going to be hard to stop them offensively. I don't care about how terrible they are on the defensive end. If you got this much scoring power in your backcourt, you have a problem. And then they could go with a 3-guard lineup where they have Rondo playing the point and have both of those guys playing off the ball. It could be serious. We could see a Splash Brothers, a lower version of the Splash Brothers down there in Atlanta, and I got Atlanta making the playoffs, even if Bogdanovich don't come. But if he do come, they're going to make the playoffs and actually make some noise in the playoffs. That's how much of a factor he is.
So the question then, Zach, is are the Kings going to match, or is Bogdanovich going to be an Atlanta Hawk next season?
Nobody knows. Everyone's asking me that question today. I think given that the Kings already orchestrated a sign-and trade for him that didn't actually work out, I would bet slightly against them matching. It's a lot of money, and they have a lot committed to Buddy Hield and now De'Aaron Fox and Harrison Barnes and Marvin Bagley's come up. So I would bet slightly no, but no team likes to lose a really good player for nothing. So I think I'll say 60-40 no. I don't feel confident in it.
What do you think the Kings should do, Perk?
No, I think the Kings should match. You can't get rid of, look, you can't let a guy like this just walk. And I think with the Kings already giving the young kid Fox his money, you can't let this second option guy, a guy that shows you that he's a closer, a flat out scorer, just leave your organization without trying to put up an effort. So I do think the Kings should match.
Well, we'll see what they do. They also have, of course, as Zach noted, other financial commitments. And let's get to one of those. Rising star De'Aaron Fox received a 5-year, $163 million maxed extension this past weekend. Fox less than 1 month shy of his 23rd birthday. So, Perk, is this extension something, nothing, or everything?
Rachel, it is everything. It is everything. They drafted Fox, and every single year this young man has gotten better. He's one of the most underrated point guards in the league, and he keeps getting better every single year. I think this is a right move by the Kings. They're moving in the right directions. It showed that they're invested into the guy that they draft as a lottery pick, and the sky's the limit for Fox, and I love him because he's a Texas boy, so I'm always rooting for him, and I'm happy for him. But he's a great starting point for this Kings organization.
It's everything, and it has to be everything because it's every damn dollar the Kings can offer him. It actually reminds me a little bit of the Nuggets deal with Jamal Murray, where it strikes you as a little early, it strikes some people as a little early, but this is a mid-market, small-market team that has to take care of its own guys, and I'm a De'Aaron Fox believer. I think he has talent. I think he can be a leader. That said, last year he got better at a lot of stuff, finishing in the paint, getting to the line, playmaking, but 29% from three. If that doesn't change, guys are going to go under picks against him, and I thought his defense kind of plateaued and maybe got a little worse. That said, if he can put together the improvements he had last year and improve those other parts of his game, then it all comes together and you have a potentially really, really special player. And I'm actually optimistic he can put it all together like that.
Well, if you're talking about a situational contractual comp in Jamal Murray, certainly the Kings would be happy if it ended up as well for them as it ended up for the Nuggets in that situation.
Right.
Lastly, I want to get to Fred VanVleet, who agreed to a 4-year, $85 million deal to re-sign with the Raptors. The deal includes a player option in the final year. It is the largest contract in NBA history for an undrafted player. So first, just a little congrats from all of us to Fred VanVleet. His expression is bet on yourself, right? So is it something, nothing, or everything, Zach, that Fred bet on himself, got those kind of numbers, and is going to return to the Toronto Raptors?
Obviously, it's everything. Isn't this what you want to see in sports? undrafted, too little, not athletic enough, can't finish at the rim, blah, 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 blah. And he comes in and he's a flat-out stud. He's a winner. He's tough as hell. He's a character guy, and he's making $20 million a year. And just for kicks, give me the player option in year 4. So if I'm still rolling, I can get back into free agency again in my prime. I love it. I love it for the Raptors. I kind of wanted the Knicks to go after him because I think the Knicks need a point guard in the absolute worst way. But it's a great deal for Fred VanVleet. Great deal for the Raptors.
Well, Rachel, is not everything, it's not something, it's not nothing. This is a beautiful thing. You watching a guy who did get drafted. On draft night, guys look forward to get drafted, but now Fred VanVleet showing guys that never got drafted, especially in this year's draft, to never give up. And much props to Masai Ujiri for taking a chance on a guy like Fred VanVleet. And Nick Nurse actually giving him an opportunity to go out there and prove himself. But you got to give a lot of props to Fred VanVleet because, like you said, he betted on himself. And I follow him on social media, and he always have the emojis of the dice. And he rolling the dice. And guess what? He struck gold, man, and I'm proud of him because for the simple fact that he came out, he delivered. He's an underrated defender. He could get buckets, and this contract is well-deserved. So to the young fellas out there that didn't get drafted or still trying to find their way on the NBA roster, never give up because all you need is that one shot. And when that door opens, you got to make sure you capitalize on the opportunity like Fred VanVleet did. So he's giving us all hope, especially these younger kids that's coming up.
Absolutely. So impressed with him, the way he managed his own development and career. And this is everything, guys, for the Raptors, too, because, first of all, it speaks well of their system. As you said, Masai Ujiri, Nick Nurse, and everybody on that staff who worked with Fred to uncork all of his talents. And they lost Serge Ibaka. And if they had lost Fred VanVleet, too, that would have triggered such a sea change in that organization. So I think this is everything both for Fred and for the Raptors themselves. Coming up, guys, we're going to talk a little Celtics because you know they maxed out Jason Tatum. What does this signal to Celtics fans? Our Hall of Famer Jackie Mack is going to join us next to discuss. You're watching The Jump. Stick with us. Who's here to join us? Hall of Famer Jackie McMullen.
Hey, everybody. Hi, guys.
Always good to have Jackie back and always good to get her when we're talking Celtics. We got a lot to discuss. Jason Tatum agreeing to a 5-year max extension that's worth $195 million if Tatum makes All-NBA this season. Now, this is all based on the projected cap. The deal was expected, but considering how Boston has lost some big free agents recently, Jackie, what does this extension signal to Celtics fans coupled with Gordon Hayward's departure?
Well, I can tell you it's been a very rugged few days for Celtics fans, and I think what this signals, Rachel, is there was a little buzz after Gordon Hayward left and the Celtics got nothing. Remember now, the third player in the last 2 seasons to walk. Kyrie Irving before him and Al Horford before him as well. And I think there was some buzz around the league. Do people not want to play in Boston? I think Jason Tatum is saying, you pay me the max? I'll be very happy to play here, and I'll be your cornerstone. And so there's a sigh of relief here in Boston because he's the most important player. This was a no-brainer for the Celtics to try to get this done.
Yeah, big picture, the story of the Celtics season was Jason Tatum emerging as a legitimate All-NBA level superstar. What this contract signals is, here you go. This is what you get paid if you're a legitimate All-NBA level superstar. And to Jackie's point, it's a reminder that, boy, that trade with Brooklyn, talk about a trade that changed the landscape of the NBA and still ripples to this day because Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are in Boston because of that trade, and they're really the only constants. Al Horford's gone, Gordon Hayward's gone, Kyrie Irving's gone, Isaiah Thomas is gone. Those two are the franchise now, and as long as they're there, Boston is going to be relevant and really good in the East. But boy, without that Brooklyn trade, it's hard to imagine where they'd be.
Exactly.
Well, listen, I understand people had concerns, but I didn't, and here's why. Without those guys leaving, Gordon Hayward, Kyrie Irving, Al Horford, we wouldn't have got a chance to see the full potential of Jason Tatum. They were just in his way, and then all of a sudden he took off. He took off towards the last part of the season, right around the All-Star break, and he started to reach superstar status. And now, guess what happened? Everybody's moving. Gordon Hayward left. They got money on the table. Danny Ainge and Wick Grossbeck and Steve Pagliuca, that's what they did. time to back up the Brinks truck. And they paid this man. This is the new Paul Pierce of the Celtics, right? He's going to be the franchise guy for the next 10 years. The Boston fans should be happy. They have a pure stud in Jason Tatum, well-deserved, and I feel very comfortable with him leading the franchise.
Well, if Jason Tatum can get his number hung in Boston Garden, win a Finals MVP, and do everything else that Paul did for the Celtics, it will certainly be a good career for him. And Jackie, my instinct is that, hey, Kyrie, Al Horford, Gordon Hayward, each of those players have pretty specific situations, extenuating circumstances, things around them. But is there any concern about the Celtics franchise losing these guys for nothing? Or do you just look at them individually and say, hey, I get it in each situation?
Well, your point's a good one, Rachel. I mean, Kyrie, who can ever explain what's going on in Kyrie's head? And Al Horford left for a situation that he thought was going to help him closer to a championship. Of course, that turned out not to be true at all, and it all imploded. Gordon Hayward, I understand why he did this. He wanted to spread his wings. You know, he had these catastrophic injuries that were all freak injuries. I do not consider him injury prone, and I know that seems like a crazy thing to say. But by the time he did get back and got a chance to be healthy, these other guys have passed him. And so if he wants to be an all-star again, it's not going to happen in Boston. So maybe it can happen for him in Charlotte. But if you're the Boston Celtics and you're a fan of the Boston Celtics, it still pretty much stings when guys are leaving. If you're going to build a foundation of a great franchise, you don't want people walking out the door, and that's what's happening.
Well, it will be interesting to see as they go forward. Going off that Tatum extension, I want to get to a bigger picture because the 2017 draft class in general has been cashing in. We've had extensions all over the board, but one notable exception, Bam Adebayo. Now, we assume the Heat are trying to maintain cap flexibility for 2021, but Zach, is there pressure on the Heat to extend Bam now? And what are you hearing from Bam and his agent about what their expectations are for this offseason?
Well, it certainly doesn't help the Heat's argument that maybe Bam should wait, that everyone else is not waiting. But this is a massively important issue because if Bam signs that max extension now, the Heat's cap situation is such that they might have to trade almost everybody up to and including Tyler Hero, according to Bobby Marks, who I checked with today, just to fit Giannis's supermax or Giannis's max or anybody else's max, should that come to pass. We don't know if that will even be an opportunity for them. So yeah, I think Fox, Tatum, and on, signing Donovan Mitchell, signing these contracts does put pressure on the Heat. I think the Heat and Bam and his team will meet this week, and we'll get news out of that meeting. And, you know, Bam and Giannis actually have the same agent, so that's another tricky dynamic part to all this. We'll see how much pressure they exert.
Zach, I understand what you're saying, and I get it that, you know, the Miami Heat still might have hopes that they could possibly land Giannis. But my grandpa used to tell me you can never pass up some for show trying to get some more. And here it is, you have a young stud in Bam who was a first-time All-Star. The sky's the limit for him. He should get his paper. He deserves it. If you're the Miami Heat and you sign Myers Leonard to a 2-year, $20 million deal, and you look at a guy like Bam and what he did in his regular season and how he elevated his game in the playoffs, it's time to pay that man what he's worth. He deserves every single dollar. Let's get it done. Y'all need to make sure that he's one of the center points of the franchise, and don't depend on a what if, and take the for sure that's right there in front of your face, and that's Bam.
Okay, Perk, that's all well and good, but first of all, let's not compare Myers Leonard's situation to Bam, because that doesn't make any sense to me. If you're Bam and the Heat come to you and say, you are our cornerstone, we're going to take care of you, we swear, but we want to help you win a championship, and if you can be patient just a little longer, we want to see how this plays out so we can have Giannis next to you and you can win a championship together. I don't think that's unreasonable from a franchise point of view. Now, if it gets to a point where Bam and his agents say, listen, fish or cut bait, then you have a decision to make. But to buy a little time here, Giannis hasn't made up his mind yet, as far as we know. We haven't certainly heard one way or another whether he's going to sign that supermax. It's just prudent on everybody's part to wait a little longer.
Well, yeah, Jackie. I was just going to say, Perk, that Zach made the point that Giannis and Bam have the same agent. So there is someone involved here who is very familiar with Giannis's thinking.
There
So I
you go.
certainly understand the idea of not rushing into this over this past weekend until they see how things play out with Giannis and the Bucks over the course of the next few weeks. That being said, and Jackie, look, we can all look at the numbers and say, yes, it would be better for the Heat as an organization if they can have Bam wait. They do give him that full reward next offseason that will give them more flexibility if Giannis, or frankly, an opportunity for another big free agent comes in to help him in 2021. But with all the injuries you have seen around the league, major injuries to major players, if you were on the other side of that, as you point out, Jackie, really good speech from the Heat, very prudent, makes a lot of sense, would you still feel comfortable taking that risk?
Right. That's a fair point, and we'll have to wait and see. It really is a literally wait and see thing. And I'm not saying, you wait forever. If you're Bam and his agent, at some point, you're going to say, listen, we've tried to play this game with you, and now we need to get paid. And everybody would respect that.
Well, Jackie, I wasn't comparing Myles Leonard and Bam in that type of way. What I'm saying is, if you're going to compensate Myles Leonard to $10 million a year, then you definitely have to take in consideration and get one of your franchise centerpieces out the way. That's my point. I know Bam is probably ready, and this is the problem with guys like Bam and Giannis in this situation having the same agent, because you just never know. It could be so many hidden agendas behind this, and this is why sometimes agents lose clients, because they may lean towards one way and give one client bad advice to help another client out. So this is the sticky part of the situation when you're dealing with agents that have the same client and you dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars in an MVP type player.
But that's unavoidable, Perk. I mean, Kevin Durant's the only one I can think of that has one agent, Rich Kleiman, that has no other clients. Almost all, I forget who your agent was, but I'm sure he had multiple clients. That's just how it works in the NBA.
To Rachel's point, if you ask Bam to wait, right? If you ask Bam to wait and say, we're going to give you all the money in a year, you better damn well mean it. You better mean it if he tears his Achilles, God forbid. You better mean it if he has a bad season by his standards or something like that. You better give him everything, because to Rachel's point, I see no reason for any player to wait when the money is there for them. Bam has earned it by any standard. His playoff performance, he's an all-NBA level player. He has earned it. So if you say you wait, you better mean it. You better give it to him no matter what.
Yeah, and look, I actually think it's to Bam's advantage in this case that he has the same agent as Giannis, Perk. I would say that gives him a window into the thinking of the big domino piece that might be affecting his situation. So I think it's actually good for Bam that Alex is both the agent for him and for Giannis, but it is interesting, and it is a case of what might be best for the team big picture versus what might be best for the player, which then again the next offseason turns into what's also best for the player who wants to compete with the team to win a championship. So it's all interwoven and a problem that the Heat are going to have to work out. Zach Lowe, thank you so much for joining us. Has been great having you with us over this free agency period. Jackie and Perk, I need you to hang out in the next segment, everyone else watching, because coming up, we're going to sift through the opening weekend of free agency and pick some winners and losers. A couple LA teams might be mentioned. Keep it locked. Myself, Amin Al-Hassan, Richard Jefferson will be serving up all your favorite NBA highlights from this past season. This is really fun. You don't want to miss it. All right, guys. So much action over the weekend. The dust hasn't fully settled from free agency, but we still want your winners and losers. So, Jackie, we will start with you. Who is winning free agency?
Oh, to me, it is most definitely the Lakers. You had Dennis Schroeder. You had Montrezl Harrell. I haven't read anybody that saw that coming. And then you had one of my favorite NBA players of all time, Marc Gasol, who I know is a little older. He's not going to, his three-point shooting's fallen off, but he's still one of the smartest, most savviest defensive players in the league. I picture him guarding Jokic for the Lakers when it comes time. I also love what Portland did in Atlanta. Those are my two runners-up.
Well, Jackie, you're absolutely right. The Lakers are the biggest winner because of all the points you pointed out. But I love what the Celtics done, added Tristan Thompson to that roster and Jeff Teague. And then let's talk about the Phoenix Suns. They are winning big time. Getting Chris Paul, adding a guy like Jay Crowder, adding another guy like Etwan Moore, who a lot of people don't value. I'm looking at this Phoenix Suns roster, and they look pretty damn good on paper also.
The Suns are such an exciting team going into this next season. It's so refreshing for Suns fans who have seen that team mismanaged for a very, very long time to be putting the right pieces together both last season and now going into this season. The Portland Trailblazers, I don't know how they could have done better considering what their roster is. The Lakers, phenomenal, considering especially that Montrezl Harrell is not only a good player to pick up, he's going to be better on your team than he was for the Clippers just because of the fit with Anthony Davis and some of the other players that can cover up for Montrezl's weaker defensive issues. And then you also kind of weaken your opponent across the hallway, which I know is a big deal in Lakers-Clippers land, whether they admit it or not. And then I'm going to throw one more in there. I don't know if this is technically free agency. I'm just kind of lumping in the whole week with trades and the draft and everything else. But Philadelphia, Jackie, you and I have talked so often about the fit between Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, and the biggest issue when having that discussion is who are the players around them. I don't know if we have the numbers
100%.
from our researcher, Caesar, but if you look at these two guys when they were on the floor together just a couple years ago, they were plus 15. I mean, that you wouldn't look at that and say, God, those guys can't play together. They don't fit, because they had spacing. They had other guys around them. And then you look at each season since then and how the numbers have gone down. Well, they didn't change into different players. It's because of the players around them. So Daryl Morey did such a good job switching out the players around them. They're not there yet at an ideal roster, but the improvement, I think, is such a breath of fresh air for those two guys. They are in my winners category for the week at large. For the other side of the coin, though, Jackie, who are your losers?
Well, I'm going to stick in Los Angeles, because again, we talked about Montrezl Harrell walking across the hallway. He probably can just move his stuff from one locker to the next. I think that's a pretty big blow. And I'll tell you something that a lot of people aren't talking about, but they should be, is JaMychal Green going to the Nuggets for me is also a big loss for the Clippers. And remember, we were talking about Rajon Rondo going across the hall with his stuff to the other locker. Not so fast. He ended up going to the Hawks. So for me, the Clippers do not come out of this well. Here's the other thing. They did add Serge Ibaka, who I like. I probably like even a little better than Montrezl Harrell because of what he can do. But he is a player option for 2021, Rachel and Perk. That means that if things start to go sour, he, Kawhi, Paul George, they can all walk in 2021.
Well, my biggest loser is the Rockets. Here you got your two franchise guys asking to be traded right now, and you go out there and you sign Christian Woods. Look, Christian Woods is a good young player, but he's not moving the needle, and you let all these guys walk away and don't make any type of moves to make your stars happy, especially James Harden, to try to keep him. So right now, the biggest loser in free agency is the Houston Rockets. They're dropping the ball tremendously. But I would like to add one more thing. The Denver Nuggets are a loser right now to me because they lost Jeremy Grant. And I thought they should have did everything in their power to keep him, especially the way that he defends, his length, size, athleticism, and in the Western Conference where you need a guy like that to watch LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, and all these athletic wings, even a Kevin Durant, and you let him walk away. I thought Denver really lost on that with losing Jeremy Grant.
Perk, I'm a little surprised to hear you put the Celtics in the winners category. I like the Tristan Thompson signing too. I think that it fills a need for them. I think that he will be a good, active, dedicated player for them, except for a few spots, relatively injury-free. But do you think that the Celtics roster got appreciably better? Would you put them as a winner, Jackie, or would you put them more as neutral?
I would not put him as a winner. Gordon Hayward walked away for nothing. And I'm telling you, people don't understand how important Gordon Hayward was to the Celtics. This is a guy who put aside his ego, Put aside the number of shots. He was the best facilitator on that team last year. And the shots that he did make, he was very efficient. Now, I get that everybody looks at the dollar signs. Was he worth $34 million? Would I have paid him what the Charlotte Hornets paid him if I were the Boston Celtics? No, I wouldn't. But he still walked away without you getting anything for him. I don't consider that a win.
Yeah.
Well, I do.
Go ahead.
I do, Rachel and Jackie. I consider it a win because I'm going to tell you why. He walked away, and now give the keys to Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and you still have Kemba Walker. So you still have a big three, and then you add a guy to the bench like Jeff Teague, who's capable of giving you 15 to 16 points a night. And then you add Tristan Thompson, one of the best guys at the center position that can anchor a defense, switch 1 through 5, is a lob threat at the basket, a center that they've been missing that the Celtics been needing. He brings us a certain type of tenacity. So I understand losing Gordon Hayward was a little blow, but moving him out the way so that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum could now flourish and take over, that's a huge win to me. And I really think that these guys could get it done.
Well, time will tell, Perk. If you're right, we'll see. It's a competitive Eastern Conference. You've got Brooklyn that we know will get better with Kevin Durant coming back and Kyrie healthy. We know Miami, they're going to be dogs, and we know Milwaukee is ready to run. So we'll see what that Eastern Conference looks like and where the Celtics fall in there. Coming up, guys, we're going to talk a little bit more about Donovan Mitchell because he got a max extension this weekend, but he can trigger, wait for this, a $32 million increase to that deal if he makes an All-NBA team. We spoke about a few guys who got big extensions earlier in the show, but let's not forget about Donnie Mitch. If he makes an All-NBA team next season, he can trigger a 30% escalator clause that would turn the guaranteed $163 million base, still very good money, into $195 million. So, Jackie, what do you think Mitchell's chances are of getting that bag?
Well, it's definitely trending in that direction, Rachel, but here's the problem. Think about the people that were not All-NBA last year. Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, all because of injury. Joel Embiid, because people left him off their ballot. Jamal Murray, because maybe the rest of the world didn't know about him yet. There are 5 players right there who weren't All-NBA. So I'm not saying it can happen, but it's a crowded field.
It's a crowded field, but look, I said this before the bubble, that this was an audition for Donovan Mitchell when he went to the bubble without Bogdanovich, and he crossed his T's and dotted the I's and passed all tests. He proved to us that he's a #1 option, and I believe he will make an All-NBA team next season.
Well, we'll get to watch it all play out. I want to get to this at the buzzer because, guys, Wizards general manager Tommy Shepard said on a conference call just in the last couple of hours that despite reports to the contrary, John Wall, according to Tommy Shepard, has not asked for a trade, and the franchise, he says, has no plans on trading Wall. Perk, what do you make of this whole situation?
Okay. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. They can't just tell me the sky's green and the grass is blue, Rachel. I don't believe it at all.
I'm going to take Tommy Shepard as it were. Just because it's not going to happen right now, Rachel, doesn't mean it can't happen 10 weeks from now, 10 days from now.
Thanks so much, Jackie and Perk. Zach Lowe for joining.